Welcome to BoxingInfo. I'm your host, The Islander, and I'm going to apologize to everybody about it being away so long. I've been just like extremely busy as normal, but I did want to make at least two videos. This one, which is a preview of this weekend's Manny Pacquiao Juan Manuel Marquez fight, the fourth fight installment, as well as do another video recapping all these other fights that I've missed, just to give you my opinion on them and such. Bear with me one second. Sorry about that. I'm in my office, and if you hear any chatter in the background, it's a computer. It's actually being tested, a notebook, playing video through Justin TV. In any event, I want to go over this fight and talk about the card, which is there's quite a few things coming up this weekend. But I want to focus mainly on this card in Las Vegas. Which Javier Fortuna is taking on Patrick Hyland, 12 rounds for vacant WBA interim featherweight title. Not sure about this one. Just going down the card of the fights that they should be televising. Miguel Vasquez taking on Mercito Hesta, 12 rounds for Vasquez's IBF lightweight title. And most importantly, Yuriorkis Gamboa, if this is still on, taking on Michael Farenas, 12 rounds for the vacant WBA interim junior lightweight title. Okay, we all know Gamboa's been having some managerial problems, and I'm sure he's going to be taken out on Mr. Farenas. Would be my prediction, but it's neither here nor there. The main event, which I want to spend most of the time talking about, is the fourth installment of Manny Pacquiao Juan Manuel Marquez. 12 rounds at welterweight for some bogus title that they've made up. Listen. There's a lot of controversy surrounding the previous three fights, all three of them. What I'm here to do today is to try to set the record straight with how, I viewed them, and I know a lot of you disagree with me on basically all three fights for that matter, and some of you agree with me on some of it. The most controversy so far, maybe it's because it's the freshest, is their last fight. But I want to just go through history real quick, because 2004, they both met up basically on what was considered equal terms, in my opinion. And that was Pacquiao had just come off of a big win over Barrera. Marquez had been working his way up to the welterweight title, winning the welterweight title from Manuel Medina, a vacant title, and unifying against Derek Gainer. So they both had the same amount of momentum, roughly, coming into this fight. And we all know how the first round went down. Again, I maintain that the first round of that fight, and I just watched the round again, that for the first minute and 27 seconds, Marquez was winning the round hands down. And then for the next minute, he was put to the canvas 3 times, leaving about 30 seconds in the round, in which Pacquiao chased him incessantly, with Marquez just trying to survive and firing back. Now, the controversy around this is how to score that round. Some of you who are novices, or just even casual fans who know very little about the sport, but not all of you, but those people who only know Pacquiao and nothing else, automatically believe everything that Jim Lampley shovels out of the cow manure field and down everybody's throats, and that automatically that should be scored 10-6. Each knockdown knocks a point off the losing fighter's round. Boxing is subjective, and my feeling on this is that round was not a wipeout round. 3 knockdowns were scored, and everything that happened before the knockdown and everything that happened after the third knockdown cannot be just washed away as if nothing happened, because everything that was happening before the first knockdown was a whitewash from Marquez, 1 minute and 7 seconds worth. I just watched it and counted and watched the timer. 30 seconds were left in the round when Marquez got up after the third knockdown. And although Pacquiao was aggressive, Marquez was not holding and grabbing, he was firing back, backtracking. So Pacquiao still had the advantage. That does not denote a guy being punished unmercifully, which he wasn't. So I'm going to maintain it was a 10-7 round, and I maintain that Marquez outworked Pacquiao over the rest of the fight and deserved to win. The rematch, I feel when I scored it going forward, and let's understand the background amongst it, coming into it. Pacquiao had basically taken care of Marquez, lost a fight to Morales, beaten Morales twice, beaten some other fighters, and then gone into basically this monster mode, coming up into the junior lightweight division. Marquez had lost to Chris John. Many people had written him off. He somehow got a fight with Marco Antonio Barrera, who Pacquiao also beat after Marquez fought him and won a decision and took his WBC title, and righted the ship. So without a doubt, in most people's mind, Pacquiao had the momentum coming into this fight. And of course, he scored the knockdown early in the fight after Marquez hurt him really bad in the second round with a right hand, left hook combination backing out of an exchange. Probably the most hurt I've seen Pacquiao in a fight since he came to the United States. And they fought momentum going back and forth with hand scoring it. I thought maybe Marquez had done just slightly enough to win. In retrospect, I think it could have gone either way. A draw would have been acceptable, in my opinion. To me, that was probably the tactfully, both good fights, but we move on to the third now. Pacquiao has gotten to superstar status. He has beaten one bigger fighter after another, whether it's David Diaz, whether it's Oscar De La Hoya, Ricky Hatton, Miguel Cotto, Joshua Clottey, Antonio Margarito, Shane Mosley. Over and over, he's beaten them all. Line them up, they're barely competitive with him. Marquez fought an ill-advised catchweight fight against Mayweather, looked horrendous. He basically won and unified the lightweight division before that. Had some anxious moments against Juan Diaz in their first fight. And was really, in my opinion, limping into this fight. And most people's minds, remember, perception makes up for a lot of things. And the perception was that Marquez was being led to slaughter. Well, in the third fight, if you just looked at highlights, it would look as if Marquez won the fight. But if you're watching the fight using critical thinking and actually looking to see what's happening in the fight, Pacquiao, by most experts' numbers, and I sent a few of you a clip from an article from, I think it was either Keenan Mulvaney or somebody on ESPN, where if you look at the numbers of all three fights, Pacquiao by far did better in the third fight than he did in either one of the first two, by landing jabs, power punches, and connect percentage compared to the output of Marquez. That in neither of the first two fights was Pacquiao superior. In the third fight, the numbers showed that he was the superior fighter. I thought he won the fight watching it. Most of you don't. And again, it's the perception that I speak of, because the perception is everybody expected Marquez to get wiped out. That's what the perception was. That was the expectations. Now, when a fighter like Sugar Ray Leonard is expected to be executed by Marvin Hagler and he survives and he's competitive, we automatically think he wins the fight going away, that it wasn't even a contest. And that's the same thing with most of you who I believe thought Marquez won this fight. You were expecting him to lose, and you were expecting him to get knocked out, and anything that happened that didn't get him knocked out meant that he won. And I'm not saying all of you are guilty of that. I'm saying most of you are, and most of the media is. As I watch that fight over and over again, painfully, I might add, it becomes obvious that for most of the time in that fight, Pacquiao's doing most of the dictating and the work, and Marquez has a few highlights every so often. The main controversy about this is that Pacquiao may have squeaked out or just got by in certain rounds, when Marquez, the rounds that he won more convincingly. And that gives the perception that he won the fight. It's not the truth, though, and that's just my opinion on this. I've been watching and following boxing for over 30 years. Most of you disagree with a lot of what I have to say as far as scoring fights, and you think it's questionable, but the situation is this. Excuse me. I can usually tell who I think wins a fight just by using the eyeball test that they talk about with college football. On the other hand, one of the things I don't know if it was Angelo Dundee or somebody from a long time ago, maybe it was Gil Clancy, used to say is, all it takes after the 12th round, 15th round, the last round of the fight is over, is watch who the camera guys and the photographers go take pictures of. And that should tell you who the consensus winner is. Now, we skip forward since that fight. Pacquiao had a fight with Timothy Bradley, which was a risk, and now we know why it was a risk. Because he lost a very tight split decision in a fight that most experts think that Pacquiao won going away. Again, maybe that was payback for and backlash for the Marquez fights, and here we are today with the two of them fighting each other. Personally, I believe that Pacquiao should be fighting a rematch with Bradley. The money is dictating he fights Marquez. Now, how's this fight going to lay out now that I've spent 10 minutes setting this up? In my opinion, the way this fight's going to go and the outcome of this fight's going to depend on what Pacquiao does or doesn't do. I've watched all three fights again recently, sat through them contentiously, and one thing remains clear. When Pacquiao fights balls to the wall and basically throws caution to the wind, he more than neutralizes Marquez. The danger of Marquez countering him is decreased greatly when he does that. Now, you're probably thinking that flies in the face of normal reason, and you're right, it does. But the situation is this. When Manny Pacquiao came to the United States and sought tutelage from Freddie Roach, and he fought Ledwaba for the IBF junior featherweight title, he was a wild animal. He was a wild, fierce animal brought into the ring. And he was the same all the way through his first fight with Eric Morales, in which case he was typically a one-handed fighter, had good side-to-side movement, but moved in predictable circles, so to speak. He was still a wild, uncaged animal. Freddie Roach, in these years, since 2005, has domesticated Pacquiao. He has refined him. He has refined his skills. And this has paid major dividends in these fights against David Diaz and bigger guys like De La Hoya, Hatton, Cotto, Clottey, Margarito, Mosley, so on and so forth. It has paid dividends. He is refined. He can box. He can move. He's using his great hand speed. He's using both hands. But here's the problem. His fights have been fought at what I would call a medium tempo. And if there's one thing we've learned about Juan Manuel Marquez is the slower the tempo, the better it is for him. The first fight was fought at a high-pitched, undisciplined tempo that Pacquiao employed. And it looks to us like that's the fight he did his best in, with the damage he did to Marquez's nose, the knockdowns, the blood, everything. The undisciplined, Marquez was neutralized for the most part in that fight. He did have his highlights, understand, he did. But as far as accumulating damage, there was no doubt about it. Pacquiao did his most damage in that fight. Now, where am I getting at with this? Where am I going with this, you might be asking yourself. If Pacquiao insists on fighting or engaging Marquez like he did in the last fight, as well as he did to Timothy Bradley, as well as he did to Cotto and Margarito and Clottey and De La Hoya and Ricky Hatton, if he wants to let them dictate to him and then he's going to react, we're going to have the same exact fight that we've had the other three times. We're going to have arguments and controversy over who won, whether you like the aggressor, whether you like the counter puncher, the cleaner punches, the volume of punches. That's what we're going to have. The only way that this is going to be different is if Pacquiao reverts back to the undisciplined animal that he was in 2004 and just basically says we're going to fight 3 minutes at a hellacious pace every round. And if he does that, I feel that is what it will eventually break Marquez down. Because the weight of this fight, again at 147 like it was last time, is not the most comfortable for Marquez. And I think it's not going to be power from Pacquiao that does Marquez in, it's going to be pace. If Pacquiao, at the higher weight himself now, understand, can initiate and execute that sort of pace for 12 3-minute rounds. If he does, I feel he'll win this fight the way I thought he was going to win the fight in the third fight. If he fights the same way he did in the third fight, or against Bradley, or against Clottey, or against, if he fights at that, what I call pedestrian pace, or a mid-range, a medium pace, where he fights in little spurts, but basically it's a very medium-paced rounds, we're going to have the same problem we've had. I've got 2 predictions, and I just named them. Either Pacquiao reverts back to the way he did in the first fight, and we'll have a clear-cut victory for him, or he fights the way Freddie Roach has trained him and refined him and domesticated him. And if he does, we're going to be talking about a major controversy again next week. That's my 2 cents on this. If you disagree with me, that's fine, as long as you bring factually based information to the table. But I think I pretty much, painted you the picture that I believe is going to go down. And I'll be back. Keep an eye out for my next video, the recap of all the other fights. Thanks, everybody.